To be able to develop this ABP project, we need to install 3 tools to our computer: Visual Studio 2022 or any version that supports .NET 6, Node.js for client-side package management, and finally, I will be using MongoDB as my database management system. That's why I'm installing MongoDB server. Next, we will install the ABP CLI tool to create our new ABP application. However, you can also create your project from ABP.io website. So, this is a .NET Global tool that you can start with ABP command in a new terminal window. Now we have installed ABP CLI tool. Today we will develop a TODO application with you. It will be a basic CRUD page with list, delete, and create features. And we will do that less than 10 minutes with ABP. I created an empty folder for my new project and named it as TODO app. Next, opening a new command line tool and writing ABP new TODO app /t, which means application template. There's also other templates like module, console, WPF, and so on. /u is our UI framework. You can pick Angular, MVC, Blazor Server, or Blazor WebAssembly. We will be using Blazor WebAssembly. And finally, /database provider. We will use MongoDB as our database provider. You can also use Entity Framework Core. Now it's downloading our project. When the project is downloaded, ABP CLI runs yarn command to restore the client-side packages. After the project creation is finished, a web page with some useful URLs comes up. Next step, we will run the DB Migrator Project. This project creates the initial database and sees the initial data. I'm running .NET Run to start it. The database has been successfully created. Now let's open the solution in Visual Studio. There are several projects in the solution. While the solution is being opened in Visual Studio, I will show you the documentation page that explains the architecture that's based on DDD rules and best practices. If you would like to learn more about the solution structure, you can visit this web page. We have main projects in SRC folder and unit tests in test folder. HTTP API host is our backend. Now let's set it as startup project and see the Swagger UI. As you see, it comes with many built-in actions. Blazor project is our front-end project. Now let's set it as startup project and explore the UI. This is the index page. It contains some information about the project. Out of the box, the template comes translated into many languages. Let's log in and see the pages that need authentication. The username is admin and the password is 1Q2W3 uppercase E and star. What you see is a vanilla Bootstrap theme. If you wish, you can also install any theme based on Bootstrap. Under the identity management, there are roles and users where you can manage your roles and permissions. Each permission comes from a module. Also, in the users page, you can create, add, or update existing user. You can assign them roles. Also in tenant management, you can manage your tenants here. You can define features for the tenants and manage them here. And in the settings page, you can configure your application. Also in the My Account page, you can change your password or personal information. I will be following this document you see on the screen while I make this development. You can do the same by checking out here later. You can choose Blazor WebAssembly from UI and MongoDB as your database provider. Here you can see all the steps explained in details. And also download the complete source code from here. Let's start coding our TODO application. We start from the domain layer. The application has a single entity called TODO item, and we will start by creating it. Create a new TODO item class inside the domain project. We will derive the entity from basic aggregate root, which is the simplest base class to create root entities and GUID is the primary key of the entity here. Next step is to set up the MongoDB configuration. Open the TODO Abp MongoDB context class in the MongoDB project and make these changes so that you will be able to use ABP repositories to save and retrieve the TODO items. Next step is the application layer. The application service is used to perform the use cases of the application. We will add 3 methods for creating, deleting, and getting the TODO items. We can start by defining an interface for the application service. For that, I'm writing iTodo app service in the application contracts project. An application service should implement the iApplication interface. That's why I'm deriving from iApplication service. And then I'm writing my methods. First, getListAsync, which will retrieve all the TODO items, and later I will create the TODO item DTO. Next, we will create the createAsync, which will create a new TODO item with a new text, and also we will create the delete action. Let's name it as deleteAsync. We should get the ID of the entity. That's it with this interface. Now I'm creating iTodo item DTO in the same file, and let's create the ID property and then the text property, which is a string. I will rename it to text, and let's move it to a proper place in application contracts project. That's it. We finished the interface and the DTO side. Now we will implement the iTodo app service interface in the application project. I'm creating a new class here inside the application project. Let's name it TODO app service, and this class inherits from the application service, as well as it will implement the iTodo app service. Let's create the missing methods. We will implement these 3 methods. At this moment, I need a repository class to perform database operations for my TODO entity. That's why I'm writing iRepository TODO item with my primary key type GUID. ABP provides a default generic repository for each aggregate root or entity. You can inject it into your constructor and perform standard CRUD operations. Now I need to add my async keywords to my async methods. In the getListAsync method, we will use TODO item repository getListAsync method to get all the items from the database, and then we will cast them to list of TODO item DTO. You can also use automapper functions here, but to keep it simple, I will write it by hand for this cast operation. ID and text from the item text, and then we will cast to list. For the createAsync, I will use the repository's insertAsync method that inserts the given TODO item to the database. I will change it to insertAsync, and it needs the TODO item entity. Let's set the text field, and it will return the item that comes from the database. So I will cast it to the TODO item DTO to return to the client. TODO item ID and assigning text from TODO item text. That's it for the createAsync method. And lastly, we will implement the deleteAsync. I will just use the TODO item repository deleteAsync method, and we will give the ID And lastly, await. That's it. Now we completed the TODO application service. Let's run the host application to see these actions in the Swagger UI. Let's go to down. And here we see the TODO item actions. As you see, we didn't create the controllers for this application service. ABP can automatically configure your application services as API controllers by convention. As we completed the backend, now it's time to write the front-end side. For this, we will open the Blazor project, and in the pages folder, you'll see index.razor.cs file. First, we need to inject TODO app service for our API calls. For that, I'm writing private TODO app service and name it as TODO app service. Getter setters. Next, we create list of TODO item DTOs. This collection will be used to bind to the list on the Razor UI side. And next, I will create new TODO text string property. This will be binded to the new TODO item text box. And we will override the onInitialized async method so that we can first bind TODO items that we fetch from the database. TODO items, I'm setting it from the TODO items get list async method. Let's write await, and no worries, it works. Next, we will create the create method to be used in the submit form. For this one, I will call the TODO app service create async method, and I will use new TODO text property. And I will get the result from the create async and add it to the TODO items list. And I will clear the new TODO text. And finally, we will create the delete method. Let's write task delete. And it will get the parameter TODO item DTO so that we can remove it from the TODO items collection. I will await it to the app service delete async method. I will give the ID field, and next I will remove it from the collection to the item, and then I will show a notification to the user. And in ABP there is notify, so we can give an information with this notification to the item deleted. And that's it. As a final step, we will write the HTML in the index.razor page. For this one, let's open index.razor file. Let's delete the existing code, and I will pass the code that I have copied. You see cart header, cart title. These are Blazorized Bootstrap components, and I'm using a form to submit a new TODO item, and UL list item for listing the TODO items, and also using want to have some trash icon to delete them. For make it more beautiful, I am adding some basic CSS. Let's run the application and see it in action. Now we see a text box and a submit button. Let's enter some TODO item here. Keep calm. First item is added, and let's add another one. We can delete them. A notification has been shown here. As you see, it all works. I built a very simple application to show you how easy to develop a CRUD page with the ABP framework, and it just took less than 10 minutes.